What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another GGF video, and today we'll be taking a look at the new ROG STRIX B850-G motherboard. Now, I am saying new because it is new in the US. We saw a little bit about this at Computex earlier this year, and it seems like the US were the last to actually receive this board. I actually believe that the US were not going to get this board at all. I did reach out to them and say, hey, I think it would be really good if we could get this board because it's something a little bit different and a little bit cool. So it's finally here in the US. Now, I also want to say that I am going away for a few weeks back to Australia to celebrate my 40th birthday. So the channel won't have too many videos going on during that period. I will do a few unboxings and just schedule them during that time frame. So nothing crazy, no PC builds or anything. Once I get back, I've got a heap of stuff planned. So stay tuned for that. Like always, let me quickly open this up. Alrighty, so we got the board out here. First thing you'll notice, it is all white, which I really do love my white builds. And not just as in white aesthetics like the covers. Heatsinks are silver, that is normally the go on these boards, but we also have a full white PCB on the main side. Then on the back side, we have the gray and we have the white logo, white Strix. That's pretty much it, no backplate. On Strix boards and these type of boards, you're not going to get backplates. I don't even think the Gene, when they had the Gene series, I'm not sure if they had a backplate or not, don't quote me on that, but it's always the higher end ROG boards that'll have the backplates. Now, like always, I'm going to go over the aesthetics, main features, and so on with this board. Now, this one's a little bit interesting. It's got some pretty cool features that some of you guys might like, some of you guys might not like. So board aesthetics, pretty much your standard white Strix layout. As I just mentioned some of those things before. I do like now that we are getting the white DIMM slots. I think this might be a first for Asus going all white. We do have the gray power connectors. Let me know your thoughts on that. Should they be completely white? It's always a tricky area because PSUs will, from different brands, some of them have white cables for the PSU, but sometimes the connector is black. The connector might be white, or the connector might be gray on the end of your cable. So it's always a bit weird trying to match the PSU to the connector you're plugging it into. Some people may not care, but it's just one of those things. Like they could do this white to match the board, but if you're plugging in a white cable that has a black connector, it's going to look out of place. So kind of think gray might be a happy medium if you're either plugging in a white connector, a gray connector, or a black connector. Same with the dual EPS up there. Now this does have dual EPS. A lot of MATX boards don't offer the dual, they're just a single. MATX is a weird form factor. There's not a lot of cases out there. There's not a lot of boards out there. So you will find that a lot of features are often skimped and overlooked for that form factor because there's probably no point for these board manufacturers to bring out these crazy high-end boards if the market's not there. And we did have the Gene, which I mentioned previously. That was in the X670E. Don't have one for the current gen, but it would be sweet to see that gap kind of filled because I really do appreciate that form factor. You can fit definitely a lot more than the ITX form factor, but then you are dropping down quite a bit of size when it comes to the cases than your full size ATX. All right, moving on to some of the other features you get. Did notice there's these little covers that are over, I'll try and peel one off. These little covers that go over the fan headers. Kind of nifty. 1, 2, there's another one there. For some reason they didn't put them on these ones, just some of them, just a nice little touch, and it actually does have a bit of the ROG logo on that cover. No postcode LED, the 2-digit diagnostic one. I know people really do appreciate that. It does have your standard light up LEDs, the CPU, the DRAM, the VGA, and then the boot. I've always liked those ones. I think those ones are enough because if it halts on one of those things, CPU, DRAM, or VGA, you know that is your problem where you don't have to go looking up all those different numbers that the postcodes make. Now, going over some of the new features, we've actually dropped back down to the older push button release. I'm not sure how long this board was in development. It doesn't have the newer PCIe release where you just rock it. It's got the button. I think people may appreciate the button, but once again, there's more moving parts. Something could go wrong, but then at least it does have the button. Now you may notice there is only one PCIe slot. I'll cover that in a little bit. The new M.2Q latch, which is this one here, that pops off this heatsink, and we have the 1, 2, 3. Believe it or not, there is a fourth M.2 on this board, and I'll cover that later on as well. So you got an MATX, 1 PCI, 4 M.2. That's pretty interesting. And then for the other Q features, we also have the Q latch, which is that one. I believe this one, sorry, I always get these confused. This was the Q release here for the heatsink cover, and then the Q latch is the one for your M.2s here. No more the one, I think the old school ones were the screw. Then we had the ones where we had to spin it around to lock it in. Now it just latches straight down like that. I'll talk about all the M.2s and that setup in a second. Just let me take some of this peel off so it's not getting in any reflections. There's actually a little peel on that bit where it says push. There's one along there, that's 2. Another one there, that's 3. A lot of peel on this. Just let me get my screwdriver to open that. Another one there, 4. One on the audio chip, 5. Another one here, always one on the IO, 6. And then I think I saw one more here, 7. Quite a lot of peel for such a small board. All right, moving down to power delivery, we're looking at 14 to 1. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but that's pretty good for an MATX board. As I said earlier, a lot of MATX boards are overlooked. They're sort of pushed to the side because there's not that much support for them. You can see all the VRMs there and then all on the back there. So quite a lot set up for there. And they are all 80 amps per stage, which is, I think I had a quick look, and that's probably the beefiest you're gonna get on a current MATX board. Of course, as I mentioned, the Gene would have more if there was one in this series. Memory is up to 256. Yes, 256 now seems to be the new maximum because of the 64 DIMM modules. I'm not sure who is producing them yet, but the 4x64 will give you 256. Once again, always like installing memory, I do want to see how well it goes in, and of course how it looks with these white boards. And even when I'm doing a black board, I just like to see how memory looks. And that is up to 8,000 mega transfers, and that's on 9,000, 8,000 and 7,000 series processors. That looks pretty sick in there, like that matches perfectly. Would I go RGB in this board? Really depends. This would light up, and then it depends how much other gear would light up on this board. Moving on to the PCIe slots, pretty basic here. 1 Gen 5 by 16 slot, full 16 electrically and physically. It's probably surface mount, you won't be able to see it on the rear, but that is not shared with anything. I would expect that, and that's also what it said in the manual. That's not shared with anything, so no matter what you do to this board, you're going to get a true 16 lanes to that slot. Moving on to the M.2 slots, under this push off cover like that, pretty nice. We have our thermal pads there, 1, 2, 3. So I mentioned there were 4. We have 3 here, and then we have 1 on the back side right here. So that gives you 4. I had a quick look online again, and I can't see any MATX boards that will offer the 4 M.2. So if you don't need a second PCIe slot and you prefer more storage options, this may be a board for you. And I want to know your thoughts. Do you think it was a good idea to, obviously they've dropped the additional PCI slot and they've added the extra M.2, because normally the second one, I think on an MATX is normally by 4, and that's where the extra M.2 has come in. Now for the slot configuration for this one, we have 2 on the CPU and 2 on the chipset. So M.2 1 and M.2 2 are the 2 on the CPU. Believe it or not, the primary is the Gen 4, the M.2 1, and the M.2 2 is your Gen 5. So I would probably make this one the primary, and then that one is your Gen 4. They're both off the CPU, so it doesn't really matter. There's probably 2 primaries. So you got the Gen 5, Gen 4, then the 2 off the chipset are the M.2 3, which is this one. That's the Gen 4. And then the number 4, M.2 4, is a Gen 4 as well. So 1 Gen 5, which is this one here, and then the other 1, 2, 3 on the back are your Gen 4. So pretty good how you do get the 4. They're all up to 2280 in length. If you do need the longer one, which is the 22110, you are not going to be able, they probably could have made it fit on the back, but then again, I don't think I've seen anyone use that longer SSD standard for those M.2s. Moving on to the network. Now, this was a little bit lacking. I really wish I would have liked to have seen something like 5 gigabit LAN. You've got all these other cool features, and you're running at 2.5 gig LAN. That is Intel for that one. And then the Wi-Fi supports the Wi-Fi 7 160 megahertz bandwidth, not the larger 320. So that'll support up to 2.9. I know some of the boards are doing the 320, mainly on the Asus boards. It is the higher end boards, but whether or not that'll make a difference for you, I guess that's up to you. We have this new Q connector. I'm assuming they're calling it something Q, where you just push it in the Wi-Fi like that, straight in like that, and then straight off. Makes it a little bit easier than twisting it. In saying that, how often do you need to twist and remove your Wi-Fi antenna? Now moving on to USB. Overall, I think USB is pretty good. It's not the greatest. It's not going to be something insane like on an ATX board or like an EATX board, but overall I think it's pretty good. So for rear, we have a total of 10 USB. So we have a single dedicated USB-C 20 gigabit, which is that one there. Then we have 3 USB 10s. So they are the 2 reds, 1, 2 type A, and then the third is the 10 type C. So that'll give you the 3 10s. 4 USB 5 gigabit, the blues 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have an additional 2 USB 2.0 type A, which is those ones, so that gives you the 10. Now moving to the front, pretty standard on a lot of these mid-range lower end boards, it's always going to be around the total of 7. So that gives you the single USB C 20 gigabit internal for the front panel, the 2 USB 3.5 gigabit headers, that gives you the 2, and then the dual USB 2.0 headers, which gives you the 4. So that normally makes the 7. I think I've seen one board that gives you an extra USB, dual USB 2. So that would give you the 9, but pretty much 7 is the standard. Moving on to graphics, nothing crazy here. Basically comes down to your CPU you've got installed. I'm pretty sure all of these new AMD ones do have graphics built in, so that's why it's on here. Not like the old school days where I had to select the CPU you wanted to get these to work. 1 DisplayPort, 1 HDMI. The DisplayPort is 1.4, so whatever that standard is, I believe it's 8K, 30 Hertz is the max, and then the HDMI 2.1 is your 4K at 60 Hertz for that. Also on the back, your BIOS flashback. That's really good to see on this board. I'm glad they've got that. And then your clear CMOS as well. No having to like find the little jumper on the board and then flick out the battery as well if you need to. And when it comes down to price, you're looking at $259 US for this board. Now people may think smaller boards should be cheaper because there's less on it, but that's not necessarily the case. Normally ITX boards can be quite expensive, mainly just because of the form factor, and they still need to put all of the hardware on the board as well. But I think that's it. I'm probably going to do a sick build in this. Well, with this board, I believe Asus has released the AP202 coming up. That comes in white. That's a really slick looking case. I will probably go with one of their newer white GPUs. Not sure if it's going to be a full loop or just a CPU loop, because I really do want to show off their new white GPUs. And of course, once you put a block on that, you kind of lose that whole air cooler white design. But anyway, I do want to thank Asus for sending me this board. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.